what's going on, everyone, and I am back again for another installment in Overlord, the Sacred Kingdom cut content. Today, guys, we are going to be continuing on with the Volume 13 content, and we actually get into one of the biggest climactic scenes of the entire movie today. It is a very large battle scene that takes place a little over halfway through the movie. It was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. So before we start, guys, I want to talk to you about something that I was kind of debating with continuing the Sacred Kingdom cut content. Like, before I even started doing the prep work for this episode, I was debating whether or not I even wanted to keep doing this. Not in the sense of just stopping, but in the sense of potentially waiting until the movie was released on streaming services. It really hinders my ability to do like edits and like adding pictures of things because I don't have access to any of the pictures from the actual movies, so I can't put them in the video. And I think that's a big reason for a lot of content stifling on this movie, especially people that are faceless, unlike me, because I'm able to just, record a video with my face and talk to you guys because I'm not faceless, whereas the faceless YouTubers, if they don't have access to those clips or pictures, they can't really make a video on the content unless they're showing like some unrelated stuff. So it makes it a lot more difficult for them. So that thought process did go through my mind, but the demand has been prevalent in the comments section, so I think I'm just going to continue on with it. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and continue on with the Volume 13 content. So last time we left off right after the introduction of the demi-human leadership for the Coalition Army. So in the movie, they kind of move through this introductory scene pretty quick. They do focus on Neia, which is exactly what happens in the book. There's a lot more detail given to things that are happening around Neia during this scene, whereas in the movie it's just completely focused on Neia. So starting off in the movie and the book, there's a scene that shows us that Ainz gave Neia Buzer's equipment. And not only does Ainz give her Buzer's armor, which actually magically changes size to fit its wearer because it is magic armor, he also gives her 3 other items from his personal stock. Number 1 is the Crown of Psychic Defense, which is kind of self-explanatory, but it protects against sort of mental attacks. However, there's a catch with that because it doesn't prevent those status. It only prevents those statuses through magic. It doesn't prevent them through abilities, and also that it prevents positive mental effects as well. So an example is the Underdefined Flag spell, which they use a lot in this arc, which basically boosts morale. So it would not have any effect on Neia because of that crown. The second is the Archer's Gauntlets, which apparently Ainz had, but he stopped using the type of magic that it enhances. It apparently enhances shooting effects, but he stopped using it, so it was just like languishing in storage. So he's just like, okay, someone can get some use out of this. Here you go. And the third one, I can't remember the name exactly, but it's a necklace that casts a spell called Heavy Recovery, and it uses the user's own mana to cast the spell. However, it requires way more mana than it would be if you were a spellcaster using it, and so Neia could probably only use it once by her estimation. But Ainz gives her all this equipment, and she's completely shitting bricks at this point. She's like, oh my gosh, you can't give me this stuff, Your Majesty, and he's just like, oh no, of course, like, you please take it. It's important for you to have this stuff. But this is, of course, just further enhancing Ainz's image in Neia's mind, which has basically been happening every time Ainz does anything in this arc of the story. So there's actually another scene that takes place before the battle. It's between Remedios and Gustav, and they talk about the rising support from the people for Ainz and how that's kind of a problem, basically affecting the authority of the paladins, who are representatives of the royal family, because the people are so reliant, have become so reliant on Ainz, and they are putting their faith in Ainz and not in actually the representatives of their own country, which is becoming a huge problem. Ainz declared to Remedios and Gustav privately that he will not participate in the coming battle. Actually, Remedios and Gustav are so worried about how the people will react to that news that they decide not to tell them. So we're back with Neia now, and there's a funny thing that's going on as Neia's going to her position. She's getting accosted by a few people from around the city. She's actually becoming well known amongst the populace because she's always near Ainz, and she has like a personal relationship with him at this point. They think she's actually from the Sorcerer Kingdom, and they call her like, oh, there's that lady from the Sorcerer Kingdom. Oh, it's Lady Baraha. And so she has gained the respect and admiration of the people just from her proximity to Ainz. And she's just like, what is going on? Like, I'm not from the Sorcerer Kingdom. Like, what are these people talking about? But like, that just goes to show more Ainz' effect that he's had on just the local population. And this was cut from the movie, but as she's getting in position, she has this conversation with the paladin. She tries to talk about Ainz, and he like cuts her off, and he keeps cutting her off whenever she tries to talk about Ainz. So, and they don't really elaborate on why that exactly is, but it's implied that this person was basically sent there by Remedios to kind of watch out for Neia, and like, don't let Neia like talk more about the Sorcerer King because we have to hide his involvement and everything like that. They never explicitly state this, but I had a theory that Remedios posted her there because she wanted Neia to die. How invested Neia had become in the Sorcerer King at this point, and also how the people viewed Neia as like a representative of the Sorcerer Kingdom, even though she's not. It was reflecting badly on Remedios, and I have a theory that's why they put her there in the first place. It was showed she would die. So then the battle is about to start, and actually a small thing is that in the book, the battle is described as taking place in the middle of winter. It's supposed to be winter, and there's like snow, and it's cold. They don't really do anything about the movie with that. It just looks like a normal day in the movie. But in the book, it's supposed to be winter. That's not really important, but it's a difference, so why leave it out? In her mind, Neia has resigned herself that she's probably not going to survive this battle. That is showing you Neia's mindset going into this battle. So then the battle kicks off, and the movie does a pretty good job here. I don't really have a whole lot to say in terms of the cut content because there isn't really much in this section. I do have to say one thing about how the movie structured it versus how the book does. So in the movie, what happens is that it shows the initial confrontation on Neia's side of the fight. In the middle of that, it cuts away to Remedios, and then it shows the whole scene with Remedios and everything that goes down with her. And then it cuts back to Neia, and then it finishes out Neia's scene, and then it continues on from there. Whereas in the book, Neia's scene completes uninterrupted. We do not cut away to Remedios until Neia's scene has completed, and then we go to Remedios, that completes, and then we go back to Neia. The fighting is already over by the time we cut back to Neia in the book. I'll comment more on that later, but I did want to make that clear that the book has it structured a tad bit different. So the battle kicks off, and the Holy Kingdom is actually in a fairly good fortified position. So they basically the whole battle starts with ranged attacks on both sides. We have, archers coming in, they're throwing rocks and everything, and also the angels that they're sending out in order to drop rocks on the demi-humans, and also the paladins are casting Under Divine Flag on all the soldiers to boost the morale. And then the human shields come out, which they show in the movie as well. And this is where Neia basically fully adopts Ainz' ideology that he expounded in the previous parts. Everyone basically kind of hesitates when the human shields start coming out, and everyone doesn't know what to do, but the demi-humans are getting closer, and Neia makes the first move. She takes out an arrow and shoots both the hostage and the demi-human. Just starts trying to inspire these soldiers, like, hey guys, we can't save them, they're already gone, we have to fight to protect the people that we can protect. We can't save them. And one by one the soldiers start realizing, okay, this is the move, this is what we have to do. We all hate it, we don't like it, but it's what we have to do. I viewed this scene as Neia trying to emulate Ainz, who she respects so much. It's hard for her, but she has realized that Ainz' thinking is correct, and that in wartime, very difficult decisions like this need to be made in order for any sort of progress to be made. So at this point in the movie, we then cut away from Neia and go to Remedios, but I'm going to follow the book format here and finish out Neia's scene. So the battle continues on for a little while, but the demi-humans start breaking through and they climb the walls. It goes down to close quarters combat here. And Neia is putting up a pretty good fight. And she even notices like how strong her arrows are, and oh, they're going through armor. And this actually came up in one of my Q&As, is what exactly the bow does. And the bow is called Ultimate Shooting Star Super. While the bow itself doesn't actually have rune power like Ainz says it does seem to have actually some sort of stat boosting effect on Neia, because she notes that she feels a little stronger when she's holding it. And that's shown in Neia's ability to completely pierce through armor with her arrows, which she notes she wouldn't normally be able to do. And the demi-humans are all attacking her, and they show this in the movie too, but the demi-humans start commenting on the fact that, oh, she's wearing the armor. Like, she's wearing Buser's armor. This must be the person who killed Buser. So they're all kind of afraid of her. They're intimidated by her. And there's a scene where a demi-human comes in and kills one of the commanding paladins and is like, I've killed the commander. He's trying to affect their morale. But then Neia immediately kills him and does the same thing. She shouts out, I've killed the guy that killed the commander. And that's when she starts getting a lot of attention from the demi-humans. However, eventually she is overwhelmed. And in the scene, it was really dramatic in the book, but it was also really dramatic in the movie. You know, it's basically, she thinks about her family and she thinks about like happy times. And the last thing she thinks is, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. And then in the book, it just says, and with that, Neia Baraha died. And that's where the scene ends in the book. Like I said, in the movie, they show her death after the scene with Remedios, but in the book, Neia dies, and then there's a whole section with the whole thing with Remedios happening. And to me personally, I think it might have had more of an impact in the movie if they had actually shown Neia's death before the scenes with Remedios. In the movie, Neia dies and then immediately gets resurrected. But I think it might have had more of a misdirecting effect if they showed Neia's, you know, death, and then 10 minutes of movie goes by, and the whole time the audience that hasn't read the book is just like, what the heck? Neia was the main character. Like, what's going on? I think it would have had maybe a little more pronounced misdirecting effect if they had done it that way, like they did in the book. But then we cut to the scene with Remedios. So in the movie, they go right into the action pretty quick. In the book, there's kind of a little tiny scene before the fight with just Remedios' inner thoughts. And really what this scene does is show you how incompetent really Remedios is in terms of anything except fighting. Her plan is to literally just kill 10,000 demi-humans one at a time. That is her plan. And she also thinks about Ainz versus Yaldabaoth, and it's showing more of her negative feelings towards Ainz. It's just like, is he even really that strong? Like he hasn't even shown us like how strong he is really. Like, can he actually fight Yaldabaoth? I don't know. And the whole scene, she's just throwing shade at Ainz, just in her mind. But then the fighting kicks off with her, and the three commanders immediately show up. And a lot of the inner dialogue, which provides a lot of context here, is valuable in the light novel, because Remedios looks at these three commanding demi-humans here, and she immediately can tell that these guys are really strong. And we actually get a little thought from Remedios that she is more intimidated by a demi-human that is actually skilled and has practiced versus like a brute force demi-human, because demi-humans have just naturally physically superior bodies to humans. So if they're able to harness that and have trained even a little bit as a warrior, they're gonna be better than humans that have put in much more time just because of their physical superiority. And so that's why she's intimidated by demi-humans that have trained substantially as warriors. And she doesn't elaborate on this, but she has a small thought where she thinks about, in her past, she fought against a demi-human that had training as a warrior, and she got impaled in that fight, and it brings back like bad memories for her. So then we meet the three demi-human leaders here. We have Vajar, who is the Zushia, and then we have Harisha, who is the Kaven, I believe. And then we have Nazarene, who's the Magiros. And they are actually all known by the Robo Holy Kingdom. When Harisha and Nazarene introduce themselves, they all have nicknames for them. Harisha is called the White Elder because he has super long white hair. Nazarene is called Elemental Storm because of her magic capabilities. Vajar isn't known because he only recently inherited his title and position from his father, who is well known amongst the Robo Holy Kingdom. And his nickname is Vicious Claw, which he inherited from his father. And they shorten this scene in the movie, but in the light novel, there's a substantial scene before the fighting actually starts, where the commanders show up and they just start talking. And they also talk to Remedios a little bit too. They have like just kind of this funny conversation, really. They're like the Three Stooges. Like Nazarene makes a comment like, oh, could I fight Remedios? Because I want her sword. Vahar's like, no, I get to fight Remedios. And then Harisha makes a comment like, oh, you're just trying to give the holy sword to Yaldabaoth because you want to have his kid. And she's like, of course, if I have his kid, he's gonna show preferential treatment to my tribe. They're just having this kind of conversation amongst each other and arguing amongst each other. And Remedios is just watching this, and she's actually getting pissed off. She's like, could you guys take this more seriously? Like, this is a life or death thing. Why are we having this conversation right now? And it's just kind of funny because it's this aside in this really serious battle scene here. And this actually goes back to a point I made earlier in my previous video about the dynamic between the tribes, because Remedios has a thought where she's like, if she just stood there and did nothing, the three of them might start killing each other because they don't get along. That goes back to the point I made earlier in that the demi-human tribes, a lot of them do not like each other and don't get along with each other, and the only reason they're cooperating is because of Yaldabaoth. So then the fighting starts, and Remedios made a strategic decision by challenging Vajar first, because she does a quick analysis of all three of the fighters, and she thinks because she has higher magic defense that she could take Nazarene, as well as the fact that because Harisha is a monk, that she would have like stat advantages against those two types of fighters. She thinks Vajar is going to be the most difficult to defeat, and so that's why she wants to fight Vajar first. And she also takes advantage of the fact that Vajar wants a 1v1, and is basically just like, okay, can you guys distract or fight against the other two? I will take Vajar. Mentally, she even notes like, oh, it's very unlikely that those other paladins are going to be able to defeat those two, but if they can just buy enough time for me to defeat Vajar, I can then defeat them. Unlike everything else, Remedios actually does have tactical know-how when it comes to fighting. So the actual fighting part, the movie did pretty well. I just have a few comments to make. The book kind of glosses over it too. They're just like, oh, they exchanged, oh, there was some cuts here and there, and then just, it's kind of more broad. It doesn't get into super specifics as to what's going on with the fight. Remedios then notes in her mind, she hears people falling, and she looks over, and Harisha and Nazarene have already killed their opponents. She was like, oh crap, like these guys are either way stronger than I thought, or I overestimated the paladins. And then another two step up to fight them, and then she goes back to fighting Vajar, and only a few seconds go by before Nazarene and Harisha kill them as well. And she's just like, okay, this is not good, this is not good. I have to stop them because they're about to go attack the rest of the soldiers and possibly even go into the city and start killing people. Vajar is adamant about, hey, you don't look away, I'm your opponent, forget about them. And she notes that she keeps like kind of diverting her attention away to try and attack the other two. Vajar, he doesn't swipe at her with his weapon, he keeps like kicking her or punching her to get her to get her attention back. He wants a real 1v1 fight. He doesn't want to sneak attack her or something. And she notes like, oh, he could have killed me probably, but he didn't. That kind of lends credence to what happens next. So she realizes she has to defeat Vajar quickly because these other two are about to, go wild. That's when she pulls out her holy attack, which is a special attack with her holy sword that she can only use once a day, and it's supposed to bypass all defenses and strike the opponent. Also, it has a scaling effect for how evil aligned the creature is. So the more evil aligned the creature is that you're using it against, the more powerful it is. And Remedios activates the attack, and she notes that normally it shines really, really brightly when she unleashes the attack. She notices it's a little dim. She's like, this is a little strange. This is weaker than I'm normally used to. So it hits Vajar, and she thinks, okay, it's done. But then Vahar's just like, what was that? Was that supposed to be like some sort of special attack? He's like a little dazed and he feels something, but he's not like hurt at all. That's when Remedios realizes, oh crap, he's not evil aligned. So in game terms, his karma values are not negative. They are like probably neutral. And Nazarene and Harisha are watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, Vajar, are you okay? Like that sword attack was really bright. Like I couldn't see anything. And they're both impressed with Vajar. They were like, how did you take that with no damage? That's when Remedios realized I made a mistake using this attack on Vajar. I should have saved it for the other two because the other two, I guess, had much more negative karma values than Vajar did. And I thought that was interesting because it's just like Remedios views all of these demi-humans, as evil scumbags that are coming in to attack the city. I guess in terms of world logic, Vajar is not considered a truly evil being. If I had to guess, I would say he's like Cocytus, really, because Cocytus is, I think he's in the neutral area or he's like slightly positive because Vajar kept insisting on he wanted an honorable duel. That's kind of like Cocytus's mentality as well. So I feel like it's something like that. And she also notes that because Vajar isn't evil, that most of her skills actually won't have an effect on him because most of her skills are for negatively aligned creatures. So then she just goes, okay, I just got to go attack the other two. But then Vajar uses a skill, which is kind of, I guess, pulls aggro because it forces Remedios to face him and she can't move. Like she can't attack the other people. Like it forces her to fight Vajar. And so Nazarene unleashes a spell on the crowd, but that's when Ainz shows up. Remedios immediately becomes pissed off. And the main reason she's pissed off is because in her mind, she thinks you wanted to wait for people to die so you could look cooler. And she hit the nail right on the head. That is exactly what Ainz later reveals to us that he did. He cloaked himself in an invisible spell and he waited for the right moment to come in. Pisses Remedios off to no end. She can't stand this. So she just dumps the whole thing on Ainz and turns her back and walks away. And she even thinks like, oh, if they kill me while I'm walking away, it'll just make the Sorcerer King look bad because he didn't protect me. That's how much she hates Ainz's guts in this moment. So Remedios leaves and we cut to Ainz's perspective, and this is where he starts thinking about Remedios. He basically puts a pause on the whole situation just to think about Remedios, and he's just like, I can't believe she just did that. Like, she didn't even thank me for coming to help her. And he actually gets so upset that his emotional suppression has to kick in. And he compares her to people he knew like back in his job on Earth. This is like a person that like became behind on a deadline and then shoved the work onto someone else because they had something else to do. And so the three demi-humans start talking shit or whatever, and Ainz is so pissed off, he just immediately uses insta-death magic on them. And so actually there was a small change here in the movie. So Ainz uses the 8th tier spell Death on Harishna and Vajar, and they both immediately die. Nazarene is standing there just like, what's going on? What happened? Ainz uses it on her, but it doesn't work. And when that happens, Ainz immediately snaps out of his like kind of like stupor he was in, like just taking out his anger on these people. How did you resist that? That was an 8th tier spell. He starts thinking about like, okay, wait a minute, like, does she have some sort of race immunity? Like, what is going on? He goes through all these possibilities like really quick in his head, and he's interested by that. He's like, okay, maybe this person is actually worth something. Let's see what she does. Nazarene responds by using her trump card, which combines like an ice spell, a fire spell, and a lightning spell. They're like lances made of those elements, and she combines them all into one attack, and it's a 4th tier spell, and she launches it at Ainz. It's described really dramatically, you know. The spell powered up, it went towards Ainz, and then it just vanished when it reached Ainz. This is because it is not powerful enough to even damage Ainz, so it gets completely nullified. And then Ainz is like, oh, that was your ace? I thought you'd had something more. Okay, and then he uses Reality Slash and just kills her right there. So what actually happened was Nazarene had an armband on, which gave her complete immunity to insta-death spells. However, it can only be used once a day. So if Ainz had used another one on her right after, it would have killed her immediately. But the fact that she was able to nullify that just immediately snapped Ainz out, and he became like that super analytical, like, what's going on? What the possibilities here are endless. In the movie, he just uses insta-death magic and it just kills all of them immediately, and then we move on. But so I thought that was a little neat thing there that they showed. So at this point in the movie, we then cut back and we finish out the scene with Neia showing her death, and then we immediately get into her revival, whereas in the book we now cut back to Neia's revival. And once again, this was shown pretty well in the movie. Not really much to comment on here in terms of missing things or changed things. This moment really is Neia's full adoption into the Ainzisms. Really, this is basically where she turns into the fanatical level follower of Ainz. She gets revived and she sees Ainz, and he uses potions on her to heal her up. Small note here, he uses a purple potion. I'll go into more of that later. She thinks it's poisonous, but she doesn't fear because it's the Sorcerer King. It doesn't matter if it looks like poison. But she's laying there and Ainz is like, oh, are you all right? And she's like, you are justice. And like, it's from Neia's point of view, so we don't get Ainz's internal dialogue, but there's like a bunch of dots in the line in the book, and he's like, okay. And so we know Ainz like is just like, what the hell is she talking about? And she goes on to explain, like, in her mind, the way she's rationalized it, justice without strength is meaningless, and strength without justice is meaningless. What is true justice is someone that is just but also powerful enough to enforce the justness. That's why she views Ainz as the personification of justice, which is her whole thing. That's been the culmination of her character arc here, is trying to find out and rationalize in her own mind what is true justice. So she now, in her mind, associates the concept of justice with Ainz, which basically at this point I viewed it as turning her into the fanatical level follower that we see her as for the remainder of this arc. Ainz kind of brushes this off because he doesn't really understand what the hell is going on. He's just kind of of like, okay, well, I hope you're doing all right, but I have to keep moving on. A small change they made in the movie is actually during this whole thing, he's being attacked by demi-humans, but like the attacks are just bouncing off of him, and then he like turns around slowly and just like unleashes lightning and kills them, and then he casually unleashes a spell called napalm, and it just like burns a bunch of them, and he's like cleaning up the scattered demi-humans on the wall, like while this whole thing's going on. And then he leaves to go do more of that. And actually something I was kind of sad we didn't see is that the soul eaters, which are those horse things, are running around the city cleaning up the demi-humans, and they have an insta-death aura. Ainz comments that in Yggdrasil, you know, by the time you encounter soul eaters and stuff, most people are either resistant or immune to insta-death stuff, so that never really came into play in Yggdrasil. Whereas in the New World, it's very, very effective, and that kind of applies to Ainz too. A lot of his abilities have insta-death effects, which in Yggdrasil were pretty much worthless when he was fighting against someone that was even close to his level. A lot of people in the New World are affected by Ainz's insta-death magic, which wasn't really all that useful in Yggdrasil. So I think that's kind of a parallel there that I really enjoyed. I really wish we could have seen the Soul Eaters, you know, mopping up. So the next scene then is also from Ainz's perspective, and he's thinking about things he needs to take care of. He's kind of just going around cleaning up, and he knows he needs to talk to Demiurge soon, and he has a scroll. He starts using some scrolls to cast some smaller spells, and he notes in his mind that the normal paper from the New World would only let them make scrolls for tier 1 spells. Because of Demiurge's ranch, and the paper he's making out of his ranch, they can now use up to tier 3 spells. And I thought this was a little interesting because in his mind, Ainz says Demiurge has contributed the most to Nazarik's abilities in the New World out of all the NPCs. At second place would be Albedo, who handles the day-to-day, but Demiurge's contributions have been the most powerful. So this isn't shown in the movie either, but Ainz contacts Demiurge and arranges a meeting, and he's worried that Demiurge is going to be mad at him because of what he did, but then they have a very cordial message, and he's like, okay, whew, Demiurge isn't mad at me. There's also a small scene where Neia shows up, and she starts talking, and she says like, oh, thank you for giving me the armor, your majesty. Like, if you hadn't given me the armor, I probably wouldn't have made it through the battle. But that's when Ainz is like in his mind, no, you definitely died. So this just goes to show us that Neia does not know that she died and got resurrected. She doesn't know that happened. She thought she just passed out or something. So she's unaware of the fact that she was resurrected. But now going back to a previous point, I said the final scene of this chapter is where Ainz thinks about the potions that he used, which I mentioned before, the purple potions, which are made by Inferia. He says that they're still slightly inferior to Yggdrasil potions, but he's been making really good progress on them. And this is a really funny scene because he then comments on something that Inferia asked Ainz about. At this point in the story, Enri and Inferia have gotten married. Ainz apparently had a conversation with Inferia where Inferia asked Ainz if he could provide him with a stamina replenishment potion, if you catch my drift here, because apparently Enri is wearing Inferia out and he needs a little bit of help. And Ainz is just like, I can't believe he asked me about that. Is it because he doesn't have a dad or something? Like, how could he think it's okay to ask me about that? And I just thought that was funny. I thought that was hilarious that Inferia was asking Ainz for a Viagra potion.
I get the sweats, my bones are cold, my teeth are loose, my heart gets really, really hot. I could read minds. And sometimes I wake up driving a stolen car. And my erections are fantastic.
It was just a little tiny paragraph or so, but I just thought it was hilarious, so I feel like I had to comment on that. But yeah, so a little extra context for what's going on with our boy Inferia over in Paradise. And so that ends the chapter, and that's where we're going to end today's video. Very long scene here in the movie. It was like a 25-minute scene, so nice solid chunk of the movie. It's about a third of this volume as well, so it's a huge battle scene. I think they adapted it pretty fairly well. There were some small things that were cut that would have added some coolness to it, like the cleanup with the Soul Eaters and Nazarene resisting the death spell. It would have added a few things here and there, but they definitely did a much better job of adapting this part of Volume 13 than they did with a lot of other parts in Volume 12, and also how they reordered the events, which as I said, I think maybe would have been a little better if they had kept it original, but I don't really have a problem with how they did it in the movie either. So guys, I do have plans to make a couple couple other videos other than Sacred Kingdom cut content before the next part, but I don't think it'll be this much of a break between, because I have decided I'm just going to continue on now that I've worked out the logistics of, oh, what do I want to do in terms of the movie availability. So we will hopefully be getting into the remainder of Volume 13 very, very soon. So guys, what did you think of this action-packed section of the light novel and the movie? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. You know I love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this installment of the Sacred Kingdom cut content, please leave a like to let me know. And if you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out more than you know, and it'll let you know when I post in the future. With that being said, I want to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.